when you mentioned the importance of remittances when it comes to our GDP, right? And because all of this resonates a lot with us. So you spoke about cents on the dollar when it comes to cutting costs on remittances. And then if you mix that part with what you ended up saying about the anecdote of local and regional currencies, could you speak a little bit about that in the context of a place like DR?
Yeah. So I'm not going to... Huh?
I don't know.
I think you can hear me. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on the Dominican Republic. I think if we were looking at doing something here, the first thing we would do is do research and really learn at what everyone's needs in the room are and how can we design the best solution together. As I mentioned in my talk, Cello is an open platform and open source. And so anybody, once we launch this fall, will be able to build on top of Cello, kind of build on the network. And so we could work with local partners here in Santo Domingo to design the best solution for the community here. So what are your unmet needs? Remittances is one of them. And how can we actually pair that with the resource that is underutilized? And so we would find the best solution together, work with partners in the local ecosystem to design the best solution. And the reason that it's cents on the dollar is because there's not all the intermediaries taking a cut through that process. And so it's direct from person to person. And so our system isn't designed for Cello to make money in that process. The money actually just gets sent from one person to the other. And the fees that are incurred go to validators and people who are actually mining the blocks onto the blockchain.
In the context of what Cello is doing, what interfaces do you use? Like what protocols? USSD, text? I don't know, because I have no idea.
Yeah, the protocol, so we're a fork of Ethereum, and it's a proof-of-stake-based system. Somebody asked me last night, what about like energy use? Like, isn't blockchain just like killing the earth? And that's using proof of work, which basically sends out the block to like many people around the world, and then computers are programming it, and then one of them wins, and so that's very energy inefficient. Where proof of stake looks at people who are invested in the network already, and then assigns the block based on that system. So it's a newer way to do consensus for the blockchain.
Interesting. The first time I heard about proof of stake in that context was last year at last year's MTech. So if not, I would have not known what you were talking about.
Awesome.
So going, Theo, where to start? I think that, so on my commute to work and here, I got to listen to an episode of the podcast Rhetoric, Shades of Gray, which actually is very relevant to me, I can identify with. And specifically the episode about financial fraud prevention for the elderly. And there was this other person, I forget the name, but she's the person from EverSafe.
Liz.
One of the companies that you featured in.
Liz Lowey.
Yeah. Can you speak a little bit about, because here in the Dominican Republic, there's a lot of that. There's a lot of people exploiting, obviously, and elsewhere, but a little bit more so here, I guess, exploiting the elderly's, not ignorance, but ingenuity of sorts, or naiveness when it comes to using technology. And I read somewhere that it's not a cognitive decline issue, but also it's the fact that there's a cultural clash between that generation and this one. And for example, in the context of fake news, they spread it faster because it seems that for them, that time it takes to check if something is real or not is a time that they would be losing on a millennial, because they're really quick to, the news and stuff, and it's like their edge of I got it first and I found it and I share it. And I think that to a point demonstrates that it's not a cognitive decline thing. And if you could speak a little bit about, that financial fraud prevention for the elderly, if you guys have any projects that have come through your hands that have to do with that?
That's many questions.
Yeah. Feel free to answer any of those.
So I think fraud is something, financial exploitation, I think that's probably a better word for it, is something that is a prominent problem with basically everyone, but in particular the older adults. And it's multifold, right? So one, is partially because of cognitive decline. You're correct, but I think a large part of that is because of loneliness. If you think about how people are aging at home, right? Their kids are not with them anymore. They're working. Grandkids are not there. Most likely they're alone by themselves. And then all of a sudden somebody calls and say, "Hey, Mrs. Smith," and they start talking to you. And then every day they keep calling. And after a while, it's like, oh, he's my friend. He's calling up to check up on me every day, but my kids aren't doing it. And so the older adult, a lot of times, they will mistake that person to be really a friend or friendly. And next thing you know, they'll say, oh, I need to do this thing, but I don't have the money right now. I promise I'll pay you back, but I need this $5,000. Next thing you know, it becomes $10,000. Next thing you know, it becomes more and more. So there's a lot of cases of that. And there's also a lot of financial exploitation, financial abuse is actually carried out by caregivers. Paid caregivers that are taking care of older adults and also their family members. And that's actually the one that hurts the most. From a statistics perspective, it is the top cause for fatality in older adults, is because from their perspective, when they finally realized, oh my goodness, I got scammed, they feel ashamed, they feel really sad, they lose their entire life earnings and savings.
A dignity thing, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bradley, first of all, I'd like to start, you had, like you were scared that your scooter problem, if y'all don't know what they're going through, it's a very personal thing that they're going on with. There's a scooter problem, and your scooter problem as it relates to us, rest assured that for the time being, I do not think that we will have it, because I think, and I'm not thinking down or anything on society, but...
First world problem.
First world problem. Yes, exactly. That's what I was gonna say.
In the room, though, I think it's an opportunity.
Yeah, I don't think that's a way big of a risk.
Put a scooter in every corner. It's fantastic.
You see, Dominican entrepreneurs, I can say for a fact because I know a bunch of them, they are not risk averse, okay? But that is another level. Like scooters, like your scooter problem here, that would never happen. But going back to what you spoke about, there are two words that usually don't go in the same sentence, and it's finance and empathy. And your presentation spoke to that. And I was wondering if there was if there was a difference between what you see, the relationship between those two concepts, what you see in developed societies, or not developed, that's not the word. I guess the word is more mature financial societies, and others like in Tanzania or in Latin America or whatever, something like that. Could you speak about that?
Yeah, we like to say that our greatest innovation is truly our empathy. That humanity needs to embrace the changes that are happening to finance, so that regardless of what society you live in, there's a way to get you to understand the concept of money and building that value over time. So, like I said, 2/3 of people that are unbanked have a mobile device. On a simple mobile device, even using text, you could let people know how they could store money, save money, and how they spend, and how that impacts their overall financial health. So technology today is truly leveling this playing field in order to provide applications as simple as notifications about certain opportunities that may arise with your dollars, your money, what's stored. And I think that's the difference between now and a decade ago, is that there are startups that are doing this in almost every single society in order to have an impact to both educate, be part of your daily financial life, and to truly change the way that banks in our society are really impacting our ability to grow, for more people to be accessing that next step on that ladder. Mm-hmm. Because the importance of money relates to the importance of education, relates to the importance of opportunity, relates to the importance of going from this place to this place to this. And I do see that over the next decade and subsequent years, we're going to see in every single society the ability to have people at a much higher sort of level financially than they are today. Because imagine living on $2 or 100 pesos a day. It's not, in this modern era, something that we should accept. And that's why I think technology, startups, financial innovations are changing everything about how we live.
Okay. So, Theo, in the podcast episode, which I recommend, Rhetoric, Shades of Grey, Season 2, on iTunes or wherever you take your podcast, I heard that you guys mentioned that 30% of the U.S., so like 100 million people, ballpark, are the elderly, right? And they hold 70% of all the wealth in the country. I think you can extrapolate that to any country. If you look at the pyramid, so you have the bottom of the pyramid, top and middle, you can extrapolate that and you'll realize that there is a lot of value held by the older adults. How do you, within unconventional ventures, there is a big change from where we are to where we should be there. And I guess you know it within the range of action of the United States because you have certain KPIs that you follow. How are you going about that, or how are entrepreneurs right now taking the first steps towards moving from where we've been up until now to talking about retirement versus increased longevity, which is very different?
So, one of the things that we subscribe to is longevity. We're adding more time, more living years, right? But it's not just about living biological years. It's actually about living better. So that's how we need to frame everything that we do. So in terms of financial services, thinking about how do we move from letting the bulk of population, 115 million Americans that are age 50 and above, sitting with 70% of the entire country's wealth, letting them sit there to actually helping them manage the money better for the next generations. So from an emerging technology perspective, we've been working with a few startups that's looking at using artificial intelligence and advanced data analytics to basically mine through the financial habits of the years past, right? And so from data, you can gain insights on what we call your financial DNA, your money DNA, if you will, your spending DNA. Understand how you're spending your money, understand where you have been spending your money, and then helping you then project through where you need to spend your money, how long you will likely be living, what are your financial obligations, what zip code you're living in, how many children you have, and from an education obligations perspective, and all the way down to managing your finances for your parents and your grandparents. So in the old days, it's really simple. It's just managing your own money. You can guess you're going to be working until 65, and boom, off you go. And you can guess you need your money for another 10, 15 years. But I think how we're living our lives, and because of the complexity of it, that's where I see a lot of potential in using machine learning and using AI to be able to help us project where we need to be and automatically make decisions for us. Tell me, based on what you know about me, which you know a lot about me, 24/7, we continuously generate data.
Yeah, data.
What is it how much can I afford to spend right now? How much can I afford to spend today? Based on all my earnings, based on everything that I need to pay off, based on everything I will need to do in the future and where I want to be, what should I do with my money? That's what a machine can do, right? And also, I think I'm seeing promising work, if you will, on startups that's looking at the intersection of health and wealth. Because it's not just about living longer, it's also about managing your health and where your health is and how it impacts how you need to think about managing your money. So if we can add that additional data set in there, looking at what diseases you have or what things you're going through right now, and add that additional data point to help you make better decisions, I think that's where we need to be.
Thank you. So we're out of time, but we do have a question from the audience that's really good, and I'd love it if in 60 seconds any of you could answer it. It's, how can we educate a society that has so much informal commerce but still does not trust the digital economy? Who's up for it?
I think I talked about it a little bit in my presentation, but for us, it's really understanding what are the needs of this community and how can we design solutions with this community to come up with the best solution. And if we do that, if we do it together, that leads to trust. If we put a face to it, that leads to trust. And so the process that you go about educating and involving will help lead to better results.
You're right. What was the community? What the
Educate through community.
educating through community. I love that, and I think that would definitely work in a place like this. Thank you so much. We've all learned a lot from you. I don't know what's coming up next, but this is over. Oh, coffee break? Yeah. So we can all go to a coffee break now, and we'll be back in a little bit. Thank you.